Want to be able to create buttons for your Discord bot like this? Well then, stay tuned because that's what we're covering today. Hi friends, it's James and welcome back to my channel. So as you just saw from that introduction, today we're going to be looking at something really cool. Buttons. This is a way that really spices up your Discord bot. Something that just makes your bot a lot more interesting and fun for the user to use. So that's what we're doing in today's video. I'm going to be guiding you through step by step how to set this up, how it works, and everything to do with this. But just before we jump in, I just want to quickly say I've got a Discord server. So if you've got a problem or anything related to anything, then feel free to join. We'd love to have you. But you know what? Without further ado, let's get started. Let's get started in creating buttons with our Discord bot. Okay then. So how do buttons work? They work in classes. That's how they work. They work via the Python class. And I'm not talking a class like how we define our cogs. I'm defining we need to create our own separate class for buttons, and then you call the class from inside of your code to access these buttons. So all buttons have to be defined within its own separate class, and then from your main code, you can call the class with all of the buttons inside it. That is the general idea of how buttons work. So let's get into how we do it. We're going to create a class first. And here we just say that I've got a very just basic cog setup called UI. As you can see, it's inside of my cogs folder over here, UI. And today in this tutorial, I am just going to be setting the class up in here along with the actual code to call it, because this is an example. So yeah, but you might want to do is you might want to have like a separate folder inside of your cogs where you store all of your different types of button classes. That might be something that you want to do, but I'll leave that up to you. But just today, I'm going to do it all inside one file. So I'm going to define the class of the buttons in one file, and then I'll be calling it again in the same file. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, let's get started. So we have to first define our class. So we can do this by doing class. And now we need to give this class a name. And well, this name can be anything, but it should be related to what these buttons do. So in the purpose of this tutorial example, I'm going to name it subscriptions. And you'll see why in a second. After you've given it your name, you want to open and close the bracket. And then inside of this open and close brackets, you want to type nextcord.ui.view. Like that. Then come ahead and put a colon. And now, so we defined our class. This is what our button class is. And this nextcord.ui.view, this is getting the button sort of code from Nextcord. This is allowing us to use buttons with our Discord bot. And that's what this view is representing. This view, there's a few other things that view contains, but what it contains for us that we're using today is buttons. And so we're basically saying that this class that we created, subscriptions, is for buttons, for the Nextcord view component. I really hope that makes sense. So now, inside this class, we need to first initialize it. So we do this by doing def __ init __ open and close brackets self, and then colon like that. There we go. So we've now initiated it with a function. Now we need to write a bit of code inside just to finalize initializing this class. And to do this, we do super open and close brackets dot _ oops, init __ open and close brackets. And now we're going to define, the last thing that needs to define inside of this initiation function is self.value is equal to none. And this self.value, this variable here, this will make sense in a bit why we are defining it here. So for now, I won't explain it, but when we get to that bit later in the video, I'll come back and explain why we've defined it here. And while we're here in this portion of the video, I want to say something. I want to show you something that you can do if it applies to what you're doing. So the way these buttons are going to work is the user's going to run a command. Let's say they're going to run like a hello command, and then the bot will reply with like buttons, for example. And so the way buttons are initially defined is these buttons will, let's say, expire after like 5 minutes. That's not an exact figure, but it will expire after a certain amount of time. But maybe you don't want those buttons to ever expire. Maybe you're using these buttons as like reaction roles. So maybe you want to just run this command once and you want these buttons to live forever in your server. So any new person that joins their server can click on these buttons and gain a role, for example. Maybe they want to gain like the DJ role, for example, and they do this by clicking a button. If you don't define something, if you don't initialize something, which I'm about to show you, those buttons would expire after 5 minutes, or a value like that. So it wouldn't really be ideal, as you see, because you'd have to keep on running the command. So we want these buttons to be able to live forever, so they don't expire. And to do this, inside of this initiation function here, all you have to do is do timeout. Timeout is equal to none. That's all you have to do. This tiny bit of code here will mean that these buttons will never ever expire. So depending on what you're doing with your buttons, what the purpose of creating them is for, then you might want to set a timeout as none. But just for the purpose of example, I am not going to do that. Okay then, cool. So that's all we need to do for our initiation function. That's all we need to do to set up the bot's buttons initially. But now we actually need to define the buttons to actually start writing the code for it to describe the color and what text the button will actually say. And well, to do this, we do it like this. We do add nextcord.ui.button. There we go. Button. And open and close brackets. So we've basically initialized that we're creating a button. Now we can define it some properties. So the first is the name of it. What's this button going to contain with text? And in the purpose of this example, I'm just going to say subscribe. And this label is how you define the name of this button. What it's going to say. So give it the name of whatever suits for you. But next what we're going to do is we're going to define the style. So how the button looks. Basically what color it's going to be. And to do this, we do it like this. We do nextcord.buttonStyle. And now after this dot, you have many different options of the colors. On the screen now, there will be all of the different color options of the buttons that you could have, along with the name of the function, the name of that style below it. For example, one of them on the screen will be red. Below it will say red. And so if you want that red color, you would type dot. After the dot, you type red. Or maybe there's another one on the screen that says blurple. If that's the colour you wanted, you'd come here and type blurple, like that. Or whatever the name is. You see what I'm saying? So look on the screen at the moment, see what the different colours are, and then come and type the name of that colour after like that. So I'm going to do red. So great, we've now stylised our button, and we've given it the text of what it's going to say. Now we need to define the function, so what's going to happen when the user clicks this button. And well, this is kind of similar to how we set up any command in past episodes. So we define the function first, like we've done before. So we do async def and subscribe and open and close brackets. And this subscribe can relate to the name up here. It's just how it's defined, the name of this button sort of thing. So yeah, keep it the same name as a label just to make it simplicity's sakes. And then inside of here, we want to define self because again, we're inside of a class. Then we want to do button nextcord.ui.button. So what this is doing is we're just, I spelled button here, wrong, apologies, button. There you go. So what this code here is doing is it's basically telling this function that this code is for a button and that we're calling it from the Nextcord package. And then the last thing we need to pass in is interaction. And you'll remember from the past few episodes, interaction is how we now define how we get our bot to say stuff inside of Discord using / commands. So now, okay, we've defined this function. Now we want to write the code for what our bot is going to do. And well, I'm just going to do it so it replies with a simple text in chat. So I'm going to say await interaction dot response dot send underscore message open and close brackets. And now I'm going to define the message that I want to send. So I'm going to say thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't already subscribed right now, I would highly recommend you do so. Please do consider subscribing. And now after the, I've realized here that there's a plus here. Let's just change this to an underscore like that. There we go. You remember this interaction send message? We've covered that in a previous video, so hopefully you already understand what that means. And now this is something that I've never covered in a video that I think is quite a useful place to talk about. It's nothing related to buttons, but it's something pretty cool. So after any sort of send message like this, we can define a variable. And this variable is special. This variable is called ephemeral. I think I am pronouncing that right. Like that. It's spelled like that. And yeah. And it is, we can define it a value of either true or false. For the purpose of this, I'm going to say false. But let me explain what this ephemeral actually means and what it does. So whenever you send a message with ephemeral set to false, it means anyone in that server can see that message. But if we just set it to true, for example, that means that this message here, the message that says thank you for subscribing, only the user who ran that command can see that message. So no other user in that server will be able to see that message. Maybe you've already experienced this with some other bots in your server. Maybe you have some bot that's, I don't know, like a setup command, and that command, and what it gives I don't know, after you run some command, it gives you like a thank you message. That thank you message might only be for you, so no other user can see it. That's when an ephemeral is set to true. There might be some good uses for this. Maybe you're doing some sort of like passwords, I don't know, management system, and you don't want every user to see the user's password. So to hide that, you'd set ephemeral to true, allowing only that user to see the response message. I really hope that makes sense. But I want everyone to see this thank you for subscribing message, because you should be subscribed to me. So we're going to set this to false. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we've sent our message, and now we need to like close off this button. So we're going to say self.value is equal to true, and then self.stop. Okay then, so this is a good point to talk about this self.value. So as you can see here, we're setting it to true. Basically, what this value is we're just using it as a placeholder sort of thing. And you'll see why in a second when we get to writing our slash command down here. So basically, the reason why we're creating this value is we can detect then what button the user has pressed. And this is useful because we're going to create a few more other buttons. And then so we can detect, using this self.value, whether or not which button the user's pushed. You don't have to set it to true, but I'm just doing it here because in this example here, I'm going to be only creating 2 buttons inside of this class. So this button here will be set to self.value as true, and the other one will be set to the value of false. Okay then, it will make a bit more sense if it's not already clear what this value is in a bit. And this self.stop, this here is basically saying at the end of the button. So once this has been sent, this button will like no longer work. No longer code will work inside of it. No longer like thank you for subscribing messages will be sent. As basically it's just saying end the button, stop the button. This button will no longer work. Okay then. So we're going to copy this and we're going to create another button. And I want to say, this is a good point to say, this class here, this class can contain as many buttons as you want. For example, when we run this slash command, you could for example, have like 10 buttons, all saying different values. You see what I'm saying here? And all we have to do at the end is just literally call this subscriptions class, and it will show every single other button in that message. So this other button here, we need to make sure it has a different name, otherwise it will only show us one button. This button here, I'm going to give it a label, the name, you should subscribe. Because honestly, there's only one option here, you can only subscribe. And we're going to give this name of the variable here to should subscribe. And I'm also going to change the color here. I am going to set it to blurple. Because, yeah, why not? Like that, blurple. There we go. And we're going to set this value here to false. Because why not? And again, everything else is the same. And you know what? We might as well change this text. There's only one option. And look, as the message says, there's only one option. So please subscribe. Okay, great. We've now finished our subscription class. So this is all we need to do to create buttons. We've now initialized buttons. So what we need to do now is literally just write a slash command to call this subscription class and for it to show our buttons in Discord. So let's do it. Let's create a slash command. And I've shown you in the previous videos how we create slash commands. So this is really easy. So let's go ahead and do that. So Nextcord ./_command open and close brackets name is equal to, and now this is the name of the function that we want to call. So whatever example you're doing it, maybe it's like reaction roles, you'd give it like you call the reaction / command. You see what I'm saying here? But just for the example of this, I'm going to name it button. Then I'm going to give it a description because in / commands we have to give it a description. And I'm going to give it just the name of button test. There we go. And then of course we need to define our guild in that we are doing our testing in, which is test server ID, because we'll reference it up here. Lovely. We've created our basic / command. Now we just need to define it. So like with a function, like we always do. So async def, and let's give it the name, let's say sub. Make sure this name isn't the same as any of the function names up here or the class, otherwise there will be errors. So just give it the name sub, and then we just need to pass in self, because again we're inside of a class, and then which is the cog. Then we're going to pass an interaction, which is equal to a colon interaction, like that. And this interaction again is what we're referencing this package that we're importing up here. And I covered that in a previous video, so if you don't understand that, go back and watch that, it will make sense. Great, so now we need to import this subscriptions class. So to do this, we're going to define the variable view and set it equal to this subscription class. So subscription, open and close brackets. There we go. We've now mapped this subscription class to this variable. So we can now just call this variable to get our buttons. Let's do it. We're going to first write a message saying await interaction.response.send _ message. Then inside of this, we're going to write the message and we're going to say you have 2 options. Then we're going to put a colon, and this is where we pass in our buttons. So we do this by doing view is equal to view, like that. So this view here is representing this view here, which then represents this subscription class here. So basically what this is doing is it's going to send a message saying you have 2 options, and then below it, it's going to paste these 2 buttons that we just created here. I really hope that makes sense. Then below it, we're going to do await, and then view.wait, open and close brackets. And this view.wait here, all this is doing is it's saying wait for one of these buttons to be clicked. Great, so theoretically now, we could run this and it would all work. But I want to show you why we created this self.value here. We're going to do something quite cool. So we're going to do here, we're going to do if view.value is none. So if no buttons are pushed, we're just going to return it. That is fine because we don't want it to do anything. Then we're going to say elif view.value colon. This is saying, so if the view.value is true, we wanted to do something saying print yay. Let's say we're going to print yay subscribed. Then we're going to say else print yay you still subscribed. But basically, let me quickly explain this. This view.value here, this, because of Python syntax, if you don't already know, you should know this, this is saying if the view.value is true, and which it is, it will print this message. Otherwise, if it's false, it will print this. And remember up here, we set this view value to be true for this button, and this one to be false. So if this button is pressed, then it's going to set this value as true. So this print statement will be called. But if this button is pressed, its value will be set to false. And then this button will be, and this print statement will therefore be printed. I hope you see what that does, and I hope you can see the potential of what this does here. But you know what? Let's run it. Let's run the code and let me show you it in action. But on running it, we see we've got an error, and I've made such a stupid spelling mistake up here. I cannot even spell. But you know what? We've learned that on this channel here, so apologies about that. So let's rerun it, and I hope we get no more errors, and we can head to Discord, and we can test it out. And look, it's now ready to use. So look, we're inside of Discord here, and look, you can see I've been doing a lot of testing in buttons recently. But let's run this code. So if we come to the / command, look here, our button has popped up. If we click enter, hopefully, unless we've got an error, which we have done, unfortunately. I've realized another mistake. I've spelt this class's name wrong. It is subscriptions, not subscription. My bad, apologies. It will work now. So look, you can see when we run the command button and we run it, look, we've got 2 options of buttons. We've got subscribe and you should subscribe because that are the only 2 options. So if you haven't already, please go subscribe. So watch it. If we click subscribe, I've made another mistake. I can't even spell response. Again, I am so sorry for all of these spelling mistakes. I apologise. But again, if we run this code again, it will work. Hopefully it will work this time. So if we run button, look at this. We can see here, we've got our 2 buttons. So if we click subscribe, look, it replied with saying thank you for subscribing. And then look, if we run this code again, because, well, let me show you now. If I was to click one of these buttons, look, it's going to error out because we've set our bot to work these buttons only once. These buttons will only be valid once. See, this is why it says this interaction failed. Because these buttons, to be set it up, only work once. But if we run this code, look at this, and then we try the other button, you should subscribe. Look, there's only one option for you, and that's here to subscribe, because you should be subscribed. Because look at that, both of our buttons work. And look, if we head back to the code, you can see that it printed both of these statements. Yay, subscribed, and yay, you still subscribe. So this if statement at the end worked here, which is great. So that's a basic quick overview of everything to do that you need to know with buttons. I really hope all of this makes sense, and I really hope that you learned something from this and that you could take away how to do buttons and that you can implement it into your own bot. While you're here, if you're new, maybe some other videos on my channel might take your interest. So please have a look at the end screen and maybe take a pic from one of the other videos. You know what, anyway, I hope to catch you all in the next video, and I'll see you all next time.